There is a hill above the last row of village houses where a banyan spreads its roots like knotted fingers. At its base sits a stone well, older than the footpath that circles it, older than the rusted tin shrine nailed to the tree. In daylight it is a curiosity, moss-slick bricks, a puckered mouth collecting rain. But after midnight the well remembers. The air turns mineral and cold, like breath rising from a throat too deep to measure. If you lean close, you will not hear wind or water. You will hear your name, spoken the way your grandmother used to call you in from the yard. Soft and certain. Answer once and the echo answers back. Not quite yours. Answer twice and something answers with a laugh. The bubbles tapping the stones like fingernails. They say the surface shows you as you were the last time you were truly happy. They say the face beneath is not yours at all. The old farmers will not draw from it. The schoolchildren do not take dares there anymore. And if a traveler wanders up the path after the village dogs have gone quiet, the banyan sways without wind. The tin shrine ticks, and the well opens its mouth a little wider, as if thirsty. As if listening, as if it has waited long enough for someone to look down and speak. His name was Michael Chan, a 30-year-old teacher who had grown tired of the city's neon frenzy. Every summer he returned to his grandmother's village in the New Territories. A place where banyan roots cracked the pavement and the air smelled faintly of soil after rain. He told himself it was for the peace and quiet, but deep down he knew he was drawn back by unfinished stories, half-whispered tales his grandmother used to tell before she passed away. Among those stories, one lingered longest: the well beneath the banyan tree. Michael remembered being warned as a child not to play near it. His grandmother would lower her voice, saying the well was hungry, and that it called to those who stood too close. He had laughed then, dismissing it as superstition, but when he returned as an adult, the villagers still crossed the path hurriedly after dusk, muttering prayers if their eyes strayed toward the stone circle at the hill's base. The summer he came back, Michael rented a small house overlooking the ridge. By day, he worked on lesson plans and hiked the familiar paths. By night, he lingered by the window, watching how the old well seemed to absorb moonlight rather than reflect it. The air around it always appeared denser, cooler, as though the ground itself breathed. One evening, curious, Michael asked a shopkeeper about the well. The man's smile faltered. "People who listen too long, they don't stay," he muttered, refusing to explain further. Another villager admitted that her cousin had gone missing years ago, last seen near the banyan. The police found nothing except a shoe at the edge of the stone lip. Michael told himself he didn't believe in curses, but he couldn't shake the pull of that story. When the cicadas hushed and the dogs fell silent, he swore he heard something faint on the wind, the sound of water moving in a throat too deep, too eager, and sometimes, he would never admit it aloud, he thought he heard his own name rising with it. The first time it happened, Michael dismissed it as fatigue. He had stayed up late grading papers, the cicadas droning outside his window like a restless tide. Near midnight, he wandered to the balcony for air. From the ridge, faint but distinct, came the sound of water shifting, like someone dragging a hand across the surface of a pool. The village was silent, no streams ran nearby. He leaned forward, listening harder. That was when he heard it. Michael. His blood chilled. The voice was soft, coaxing, almost maternal. He jerked back from the railing, heart hammering. Logic rushed in. He was overtired, his mind filling silence with echoes. But as he turned to retreat inside, the sound came again, drawn out, certain. Michael. The next day he avoided the path by the banyan. He buried himself in lesson notes, convincing himself that imagination had played a cruel trick. But the unease lingered. At the market, villagers glanced at him curiously, as though sensing he had drawn too close. One old woman muttered under her breath when he passed, "It calls the ones it wants." 2 nights later, unable to resist, Michael walked the ridge. Moonlight silvered the stones. The banyan loomed, its roots clutching at the well like veins over a wound. He told himself he'd stay only a moment, just long enough to prove nothing waited there. At first, silence. Crickets hummed, a night bird screeched. the distant bark of a dog. He exhaled, relieved, but then the air shifted, cooler, damp. The insects quieted. From the well rose the sound of bubbles breaking, as though something beneath had stirred awake. Michael stepped closer. The stone lip glistened with condensation though the night was dry. He leaned forward, peering into the black. His reflection swam faintly, distorted by ripples that shouldn't have existed. Then, from below, a whisper spiraled upward, soft as a secret. "Michael, come closer." He staggered back, nearly tripping over a root. His chest heaved, breath clouding in air suddenly colder than autumn. He fled down the path, refusing to look back, though he swore he heard laughter bubbling behind him, wet, muffled, yet unmistakably human. The next morning, his neighbors avoided his eyes. No one asked where he'd gone. And Michael, shaken, vowed not to return to the banyan after dark. Yet deep inside, he felt the hook set. The well had spoken his name. And part of him, terrified, curious, already longed to hear it again. Michael tried to avoid the ridge, but the well began to invade his nights whether he walked there or not. Lying in bed, he would wake to the sound of dripping water inside the house, only to find the tap's bone dry. His mirror sometimes fogged as if someone had breathed against it, though no one else was there. Always, just as he steadied his nerves, the whisper returned, low, coaxing, echoing through the stillness. "Michael." The voice threaded its way into his sleep. He dreamed of standing beside the banyan, of looking down into the well and seeing a pale face ripple up to meet him, not his own reflection, but someone smiling with too many teeth. When he woke, the sheets were damp, his clothes clinging as though he had crawled from water. The villagers began to notice his drawn expression. A man at the tea house clapped his shoulder, muttering, "You've heard it, haven't you? Don't answer. That's how it keeps you." Michael tried to ask what he meant, but the man turned away, lips pressed tight as if speaking further would invite the curse. One evening, thunder rolled in from the harbor. Rain lashed the village, and the electricity faltered. Michael lit a candle, its flame wavering in drafts that seemed to rise from the floor itself. Each flicker cast the shadow of the banyan across his wall, roots spreading wider with every heartbeat. And then, over the patter of rain, he heard it again, unmistakable. "Michael, look." Against his better judgment, he stepped to the window. On the ridge, in the hammering rain, the well glowed faintly as though lit from within. Water spilled over its lip though no storm drain could explain it. Streams crawling down the path like fingers searching. Compelled, half in fear, half in awe, Michael threw on a coat and ran into the storm. The villagers' doors were shut tight, curtains drawn, but he could feel unseen eyes tracking him. The path slickened underfoot, pulling him upward. When he reached the banyan, the rain seemed to pause. Muffled, the well gaped, its stone rim shining wet and new, as though freshly built. Michael stepped closer, his heart pounding so loudly he almost didn't hear the laughter bubbling up from the dark. It was higher now, more insistent, like children playing in a pool. And then the surface rippled, forming words, not sound this time, but letters etched in trembling light across the water. "Come down." Michael stumbled back, throat dry, yet he couldn't look away. He realized then that the well wasn't calling to the village at random. It was calling to him specifically. The storm broke before dawn, but Michael could not shake what he had seen. The words across the water had not been imagination. They had been deliberate, aimed at him. All morning he wandered the village, restless, waiting for someone to acknowledge it. No one did. The grocer kept his head low. The old men playing chess would not meet his gaze. It was as though the whole community had silently agreed not to speak of the well. Finally, he cornered Mrs. Lau, the oldest woman in the village. She had known his grandmother. "You hear it, don't you?" she rasped, her eyes sharp despite her age. When he nodded, she sighed, lowering her voice. During the war, when the soldiers came, the well was not just for water. People disappeared, some were thrown in, some jumped to escape. The ground swallowed screams. After the war ended, no one filled it. How could we? The dead still lived down there. Michael's stomach turned. He asked if anyone ever tried to seal it. Mrs. Lau shook her head. Those who tried heard their own names until they went mad. The well remembers. It keeps calling until someone answers. That night, unable to resist, Michael hiked back to the ridge with a lantern. The banyan loomed against a starless sky. He set the lantern on the stone rim and forced himself to look down. The beam cut into the black water, but what it revealed stole his breath. Dozens of faces floated just beneath the surface. Some young, some old, their features pale and swollen. Their eyes stared upward, mouths moving in silent chorus. Among them, one face stood out, his grandmother's. Her lips parted, and this time the sound rose clear as a bell. "Michael, don't be afraid." Tears stung his eyes. "Why you? Why here?" he whispered. Her reflection shivered. "I tried to stop them. They pushed me in. I never left. We cannot leave until someone takes our place." The water rippled, distorting her into a grimacing mask before smoothing back into her familiar smile. "You are chosen, Michael. That is why it calls your name." He stumbled back, heart pounding. The truth clawed at him. The well was no accident of folklore, it was a prison. A grave, a mouth that fed on the living by binding them to the dead. And now it had chosen him to complete the story. Michael's knees buckled as he staggered away from the well. The lantern flickered, shadows of the banyan's roots stretching across the ground like grasping fingers. From below, the chorus of voices swelled, layered and insistent, each one calling his name now. Some coaxed, some begged, some screamed. His grandmother's voice cut through them all, calm but commanding. "Come down. End this." The air thickened, damp and metallic, pressing into his lungs. The ground beneath him quivered faintly, as if the hill itself was breathing with the well. He turned to run, but his body froze. Coldness snaked up his legs, invisible shackles pulling him backward. He clawed at the earth, dragging his nails through wet soil. But the pull was relentless. The lantern toppled, its flame sputtering out, plunging everything into a trembling half-dark. Michael gasped, forcing his voice into the night. "You're not her. You're not my grandmother." The water hissed as though offended. The faces below blurred, mouths widening grotesquely. His grandmother's image surfaced again. Eyes too wide, smile too sharp. "If I am not her, why do I know your name? Why do I know the song she hummed to you when you were small?" And then, chillingly, the voice sang it, low, lilting, exactly as he remembered, a memory he had told no one. Michael's resolve cracked. For a moment he tottered on the edge, ready to surrender. Then anger flared. He clenched his fists. "You've stolen their voices. You're nothing but an echo." The water erupted. A column surged upward, hands forming from liquid, grasping, clawing at his arms. The cold seared his skin like ice and fire combined. He screamed, pulling back with all his strength, but the spectral hands dragged him toward the lip. At the last moment, he grabbed a stone from the rim and hurled it into the water. The splash rang out like a gunshot. The hands recoiled, shrieking. The chorus fractured into wails, some furious, some despairing. His grandmother's face twisted, features dissolving into a hollow-eyed skull before sinking beneath the surface. Michael collapsed to his knees, gasping. The pull slackened, the well quieted, though ripples still licked the stones. The air smelled of brine and rot. He realized the fight wasn't over. The well hadn't released him, it had only retreated, waiting. And then he heard it again, faint, right behind his ear this time. Not from the water but from the night itself. "Michael, next time, you won't resist." Michael did not remember running home. Only the blur of banyan roots under his feet and the slam of his door behind him. He sat shaking until dawn, every lamp in the house burning, listening for the whisper that never came. When morning broke, the village looked unchanged. Roosters crowed. Children chased one another between stalls, but to Michael everything felt thinner. Fragile, as if the world itself had cracked during the night. The blistered marks on his arms were real, red and raw where the water hands had seized him. No one asked. Villagers avoided his gaze, lips pressed shut. It was clear they already knew. When he pressed them for answers, they shook their heads, muttering prayers, unwilling to speak of the well. For the rest of the summer, Michael kept to the village by day and barred his doors at night. Yet silence offered no comfort. Sometimes he would wake to the sound of water dripping steadily beside his bed. Sometimes the mirror fogged though the air was dry. And once, just before sleep, he swore he heard his grandmother's voice humming softly in the corner of the room. When his return ticket came due, Michael left without looking back at the ridge. On the bus, the hills shrank behind him, banyan roots lost in haze. Relief washed through him, but uneasily, for he knew distance was no barrier. That night, back in the city, Michael stood at his apartment sink and turned on the tap. Water gushed clear and ordinary, yet beneath the hiss, faint and sure, he thought he heard it again, his name, whispered in the rising steam. Wells are meant to give life. They hold water, the oldest promise between land and people. But sometimes, when enough sorrow is poured into them, they do not quench thirst, they keep it. The well beneath the banyan was not haunted because of superstition. It was haunted because memory had been forced down its throat. And memory is heavier than stone. Michael learned that ghosts do not always rise in the shape of shadows. Sometimes they ride in the simplest things, the sound of dripping water, the ripple of a reflection, the voice that knows your name. What terrified him most was not that the well whispered, but that it whispered with such intimacy, using the voice of someone he loved. Perhaps that is the true danger of forgotten tragedies. When we bury them, when we seal the mouths of the dead with silence, they find new mouths. They speak through echoes until someone listens. So if you ever pass a well at night and hear water stir though the air is still, resist the urge to lean closer. Do not answer if it calls your name, because some wells do not want you to drink. Some wells want you to join.